we've been talking about damages. So we've been talking about, the cat, the dog that jumped off the roof and broke some pots in the courtyard below, or the ox that has been goring another ox. And these are all financial damages. But we are now going to turn the temperature up a little bit. And we're going to think about the ox that not only gores a person or an ox, but actually kills a person and an ox. What if the result of the damage is fatal? Because then we are no longer just merely in the laws of damages. We're into, we may be into the capital statute. And in order to understand where the Mishnah is coming from, we need to go back and look at some of the verses, some of the Pesukim. And we're going to be back in Mishpatim, in Exodus, just where all of the other laws about damages are drawn from. And we're going to go back to the ox, who's warned. So if this ox has been in the habit of goring, and the master, the owner, did not take care of it, and then the text says, Vehemit ish or isha, and it kills a man or a woman. The classic case of an ox which wasn't a dangerous ox, that wasn't properly guarded, is that it actually kills a man or a woman. And the text then says, Hashor yisakel v'gam ba'alav yumat. The ox is going to be stoned and its owner is going to be put to death. There's a fatal punishment for someone who owns a dangerous animal and does not take care of it. And the Torah then goes on to say that in kofer yushat alav venatan pidyon nafsho. If some ransom is imposed, then the owner will pay whatever is imposed to redeem his life. And the same applies, by the way, if a child is killed. If it gores a child, a boy or a girl, it's the same law. So we don't behave differently for children, but somehow we do for slaves. If it gores a slave, if the ox gores a slave, male or female, interestingly, the halakha is gender neutral right the way through here. It's not neutral in terms of ownership, but it's gender neutral, age neutral. Boy, girl, minor, adult, is the same. But as far as a slave is concerned, he gives 30 shekalim to the master of the owner of the slave. This must be a Canaanite slave. Must be. So that's the verse. And by the way, you might think at this point, well, hang on, we haven't learned in the Mishnah about the owner of this dangerous ox being put to death. There's nothing, we haven't never come across this concept before. And before we go to the Mishnah, I just want to look at Rashi on this verse, on our verse. Quoting, by the way, the Mechilta, the Talmud in Sanhedrin also quotes the same Mechilta. Sanhedrin is the tractate that deals with capital punishment. So the verse says, V'gam alav yumat, the owner of this dangerous ox is going to be put to death. And Rashi comments there two simple words, bidei shamayim, at the hand of God. So Rashi knows, the Mechilta knows that we have to take care of dangerous objects. And if we don't take care of them, and if they injure someone and kill them, we are liable for their blood. And at some point, this will catch up to us at some point. But not through human agency. The courts, it is not the job of the courts to go and punish someone in this way for their carelessness. Something will catch up to them eventually, bidei shamayim, Rashi says, at the hand of God, but not by human courts. And Rashi quotes a verse following the Mechilta. We're now in Numbers, in Bamidbar, mot yumat hamakeh rotzeahu. The murderer shall be put to death, for he is a murderer. And the Mechilta says there, you shall put him to death for his murder. You shall not put him to death for his ox's murder. We don't deploy capital punishment for an accident, even though we do need to take care. So let's now look at the Mishnah. Let's look at the Mishnah. Sure, shinagach et adam umet. So this ox gored a person and died. Muad mishalem et hakofer. If it was known, he must pay the ransom. By the way, you might wonder, well, hang on, if it was known, that means 3 people have testified already that it's dangerous. So you think, well, how could it have? I mean, if 3 people have testified, and by the way, we've learned from the verses that we're going to kill the ox after this happens. Well, you could wonder, by the way, how is he still around? And the Gemara brings various explanations to try to explain this. Maybe it wasn't a fatal goring. Maybe he gored a non-Jew. The penalty of death doesn't apply in this case. I don't know. Anyway, if he gored a person and died, if it was muad, if the owner had been warned, then the owner must pay the ransom. There's absolutely no mention here about the owner being liable for the death penalty. It doesn't even arise in the Mishnah. And what if it was a harmless ox? V'tam patur min hakofer. If it was harmless, he's exempt from the ransom. And we've already seen, by the way, that if you're caught essentially under the capital code, you're exempt under the civil code. In both cases, the ox is liable for death. And so too with a son or a daughter. So the Mishnah essentially repeats what we've learned in the verses. If it gored a male or a female slave, noten shaloshim sela, he pays 30 sela. So the verse says 30 shekalim, and a shekel in Tanakh is a sela in the Mishnah, and that is a fixed sum. Bein shehu yafeh b'me'ah maneh, even if he was worth a maneh, which is, a maneh is 100 dinar, 30 sela are 120 dinar. So whether he's worth 100, even if he's not even worth a gold dinar, which is not even 25. I've said 25 sela, but actually that should be 25 zuz. 25 zuz. So it's a fixed penalty. And we're going to learn the same kind of exemptions about an ox which doesn't intend to kill. So sure, shehaya mit chatech bakotel. So maybe an ox was rubbing itself against the wall. V'nafal al hadam, and it fell on a person. Well, just as the human is only responsible for his deliberate murder, not for his ox's murder, we're going to see that the ox is not going to be responsible for the wall falling on a person, and it's not going to be responsible for other types of accidental injury. Maybe it intended to gore and kill an animal, and it ended up killing a human. Lanochri. This is out of our sensibilities now. But remember, we've already said that in the language of the Mishnah, a nochri, a non-Jew, is someone who's really in another world. A non-Jew, someone who sends humans into the amphitheater to fight lions. And then we saw that the Meiri says, this does not apply to Gentiles who are bounded by laws of ethics and religion. This doesn't apply to the kind of Gentiles you meet when walking around Chevy Chase or Hampstead. But the Mishnah says, La nochri, and a non-Jew, a foreigner, this ox intended to kill a non-Jew. V'harag et ben Yisrael, he killed an Israelite. Li nefalem v'harag ben kayama, he intended to kill a stillborn fetus, and he killed a live child. And in all these cases, the ox is exempt from the death penalty. Just as the human is not punished for the crime of its ox, the ox itself is not punished for accidental injury.